You are walking across dry savanna. The sun is high, the grass is brittle, and your throat has been dry for 2 days. Your water is gone. You have no bottle, no filter, no map, and no idea where the nearest river is. If you do not find water by tomorrow, you will start making mistakes. By the day after, you will struggle to think clearly. Within about 3 days in this heat, you could be dead. Now look around you. There is a trail of hoof prints in the dust. There is a patch of greener grass in the distance. There is a dry riverbed cutting through the plain, and at one bend, the sand looks darker than everywhere else. Read these signs correctly, and you drink. Read them wrong, and you die. This is the oldest test of human intelligence there is. Long before tools, long before language, as we know it, long before art and agriculture, humans were water finders. Every one of your ancestors passed this test. Every one of them found water in a world with no taps, no wells, and no plumbing. And the methods they used were so good that they kept every generation alive for hundreds of years. You would think this skill would be famous. Instead, most of us could not find water in a forest if our lives depended on it. We have outsourced survival to infrastructure, but the knowledge still exists, preserved in living forager cultures and in the archaeology of our own ancestors. And it is one of the most impressive bodies of practical science humans ever built. It is also one of the oldest. The search for water is older than the spear, older than the bow, older than fire itself. Before humans could hunt, gather, cook, or talk about it, they had to drink. Water is the original technology problem, and the solutions our ancestors built for it are the foundation that every later invention stands on. Let me show you how they did it. Start with the simplest trick of all. Follow the animals. Every large animal on the savannah needs water every single day. Elephants drink daily. Zebras drink daily. Antelopes, buffalo, and most game animals travel to water at predictable times, usually at dawn and dusk. Their paths are worn into the ground over generations, and those paths all lead somewhere. If you find a game trail and follow it, especially in the direction the animals head in the evening, you will almost always reach water. This is not a guess. It is the oldest reliable map in human history. A map written in footprints. Birds are even more honest. Birds that feed on grain and insects must drink frequently, and they cannot carry water with them. Parrots, doves, finches, and weaver birds fly to water every morning and evening. If you watch where a flock of doves goes at sunset, you are watching a live GPS signal to the nearest drink. Human trackers have used this method for as long as there have been trackers. The birds do not lie. The same logic works with insects. In many dry regions, bees and wasps need water to cool their nests, and they fly in straight lines between the nest and the water source. A line of bees flying low and fast in the heat of the day is a pointer. Follow it, and you will find a seep, a spring, or a pool. Indigenous peoples across Africa, Australia, and the Americas knew these lines well. The landscape was full of directions, if you knew how to read them. But what if there are no animals around? Then you read the plants. Green is a message. In a landscape of brown grass and bare ground, any patch of green means water is close to the surface. Certain trees are water indicators. The baobab stores water in its trunk. Some acacia species send roots deep into underground aquifers, and where they grow, water can usually be found by digging. Reeds, sedges, and cattails grow only where the water table is high. If you see green reeds in a dry landscape, you are standing above water. The plants are telling you exactly where to dig. This is where the real skill begins, because finding the right spot is only half the problem. You still have to get the water out, and you have to make it safe. Consider the dry riverbed. In many dry regions, rivers flow for only a few weeks a year, and for the rest of the year, the bed is a stretch of sand and stone. It looks dead, but beneath the surface, the sand holds water. The river is still there, running underground, hidden below the dry crust. Foragers who know this dig in the lowest point of the bed, at the outside of a bend, where the water flow naturally digs deepest. They scoop out the sand until the hole fills with clear water seeping through the sand. The anthropologist Richard B. Lee documented exactly this method among the Juchi-Hoansi, the San people of the Kalahari Desert, in his 1979 study of their foraging life. In the dry season, when every visible water source was gone, the Juchi-Hoansi dug wells in dry riverbeds, sometimes more than a meter deep, and they knew precisely which bends in which beds would hold water. The sand itself acted as a filter. The water that seeped into their holes was cleaner than the water at the surface of a lake. The same idea, in a slightly different form, is the soakage. Aboriginal Australians in the arid interior dug shallow pits in damp ground, in creek beds or beside certain trees, and let the sand filter the water as it seeped into the hole. A soakage is not a well. It is a slow, patient trickle. You scoop the water out as it appears, wait, and scoop again. It can take hours to gather a day's supply, but it is water, and in the desert, water is everything. There is an even more surprising source hiding in the landscape itself. In many desert regions, you can collect water from plants. Certain vines, when cut, release a stream of clear, drinkable water. The barrel cactus of the American Southwest stores water in its flesh, and native peoples knew how to extract it. In the Kalahari, the San harvested water from the roots of specific plants, digging them up, cutting them. None of this is obvious. Every single one of these techniques had to be discovered, tested, and remembered generation after generation. So now you have water. What do you do with it? If the water is from a soakage or a deep well, it has already been filtered by sand, and it is probably drinkable. But surface water from a pond, a puddle, or a slow stream is a risk. It can carry parasites and bacteria that will make you sick. And being sick in the wilderness with no medicine and no water to spare can be a death sentence. The most important discovery in water safety was fire. Boiling kills almost every waterborne pathogen, and humans learned to boil water long before they understood why it worked. But early humans had no metal pots. How do you boil water without a pot? The answer is one of the cleverest inventions of the Stone Age. Hot stone boiling. You take stones, heat them in a fire until they are glowing, and then drop them into a container filled with water. The container could be made of animal hide, bark, or carved wood, materials that would burn or melt if placed directly in a fire, but which are perfectly fine when the heat arrives through the stones. Each stone heats the water a little more, and with enough stones, the water reaches a rolling boil. This technique appears across the world, in every continent where humans lived, and it was used for tens of thousands of years. It is a brilliant piece of materials, science. It separates the fire from the container, using the stones as heat exchangers. The people who invented hot stone boiling had never heard of heat exchangers. They just needed to boil water, and they figured out how to do it with rocks. Now, once you have clean water, you face the third problem. How do you carry it? Let me show you what early humans figured out. Water is heavy. A day's supply for one person weighs several kilograms, and it sloshes around, evaporates, and leaks. For a hunting camp that moves every few days, carrying water is a serious engineering problem. The solution that early humans found was elegant, and it survives in the archaeological record in one of the most beautiful objects of the Stone Age. At Diepkloof Rock Shelter in South Africa, archaeologists led by Pierre-Jean Texier found fragments of ostrich eggshell containers dated to about 60,000 years ago. Ostrich eggs are huge, about the size of a grapefruit, and their shells are thick and strong. Early humans drilled a hole in one end, emptied the egg, and used the shell as a canteen. They even decorated the shells with engraved patterns, possibly to mark ownership or clan identity. The Diepkloof flasks are the oldest known water bottles in the world, and they are older than most of the technology we think of as ancient. The engineering here deserves respect. An Ostrich eggshell bottle is lightweight, waterproof, durable, and easy to carry on a strap. It could hold about a liter of water. It did not break easily, and if it did, the pieces could be reshaped into beads. A single ostrich egg could provide both a water bottle and jewelry. Nothing was wasted. There are even more water sources hiding in the landscape, and some of them are not on the ground at all. Dew. In many dry regions, the nights are cool enough that moisture condenses on grass and leaves. Foragers in places like the Kalahari and the Australian outback have used dew as a water source, wiping it off vegetation with a cloth or a bunch of grass and squeezing the water out. It is slow work. A single morning might yield only a cup or two, but in a survival situation, a cup of dew can be the difference between life and death. The knowledge of where dew collects, on which slopes, under which plants, is another piece of the map that never gets written down. In cold environments, the water problem looks completely different. In the Arctic and in high mountains, water is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It is frozen. Early peoples in these regions learned to melt snow and ice for drinking. But they also learned the subtle skill of choosing the right snow. Fresh, fluffy snow yields very little water for its volume, and eating it raw can dangerously lower body temperature. Ice is denser and gives more water, and in spring, running meltwater from glaciers is drinkable. The Inuit, the Sami, and the mountain peoples of the Andes and the Himalayas all developed their own versions of this knowledge. The technique changes with the landscape, but the goal is always the same: turn the environment into a drink. And for all of history up to the modern era, there was one more method waiting in the wings: distillation. The basic idea, heating water into steam and condensing it back into a clean liquid, was known in the ancient world and perfected by the chemists of the Islamic Golden Age, who used glass alembics to purify liquids. Distillation produces water that is nearly sterile, and it is still the basis of modern water purification and desalination. What the Stone Age achieved with hot stones and sand, later civilizations achieved with fire and glass. The principle, separating the water from everything else, is ancient. You can see the full water toolkit come together if you imagine a dry season camp in southern Africa 60,000 years ago. The day begins before dawn when the women walk to a known dry riverbed. They dig a well in the sand, wait for it to fill, and scoop the filtered water into their ostrich eggshell bottles. On the way home, they cut a vine and collect its water, and they note where a flock of doves was heading. Back at camp, if the water came from a questionable pond, they heat stones in the fire and boil it. By nightfall, the camp has enough clean water for the next day, gathered from a landscape that looked, to an untrained eye, completely dry. This is the part that is easy to forget. Our ancestors did not survive because they were lucky. They survived because they had knowledge. A single person who does not know the signs can walk past 1,000 liters of water. A person who knows the signs can drink in the middle of a desert. The difference between those two people is not strength. It is information. And this information was hard-won. Every technique, the animal trails, the bird lines, the green reeds, the dry bed wells, the soakages, the plant water, the eggshell bottles, the hot stone boil, every single one of them was discovered by trial, error, and luck, and then tested across countless generations. The knowledge that survived is the knowledge that worked. Everything else killed its inventors. The deep history of this skill is written into where we lived. Archaeologists have found that early hominins, from the first toolmakers in East Africa to the Neanderthals of Europe, repeatedly camped near water. Sites like Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania and Kubifara in Kenya are full of stone tools and animal bones, and they sit on the shores of ancient lakes and rivers. This was not an accident. Water was the anchor of every camp. The first permanent human places were not chosen for their views. They were chosen because someone knew the water was reliable there. The knowledge also had to survive a seasonal trap that killed the careless. In the rainy season, water is everywhere. Puddles, streams, and pools fill the landscape, and it is easy to drink from any of them. But standing water in the wet season is a breeding ground for parasites and disease. The foragers who knew the rules did not trust the easy water. They boiled it, or they waited for the filtered water of the deep wells, or they chose running water over standing water. The easy water was the dangerous water. This counterintuitive rule, learned over generations, is one of the reasons human groups survived wet seasons at all. And the knowledge was taught, not inherited. Children in foraging societies learned water finding the way children everywhere learn anything: by watching, by being told, by making mistakes. A child who followed a wrong trail and came home thirsty remembered the lesson. A child who watched an elder dig a well and drank clean water learned the method. The knowledge moved from generation to generation, not in genes, but in attention. Every human alive today is the descendant of an unbroken chain of water finders, who each passed this skill to the next. There is a social side to water that runs just as deep. Water was often the thing a group could not produce alone. One person can dig a shallow well, but a deep well in a dry riverbed takes hours and several people working together. The sharing of water and the sharing of the knowledge of where water is became a foundation of trust between groups. A band that knew a secret spring had something valuable, and a visitor who was shown that spring was being given a gift of trust. Water is one of the oldest currencies of human friendship, older than trade, older than money. Water also shaped where conflict happened. In landscapes where water was scarce, the sources were the fixed points of the map, and control of a reliable spring meant control of the region around it. The first territorial boundaries in human history were probably not drawn on maps. They were drawn by the practical fact that a group could only live where it could drink. The archaeology of conflict, the fortified settlements, and the violent scars on ancient skeletons often sits near water. The most precious resource was the one everyone needed, and no one could live without. There were also smaller rules of thumb that saved lives in the daily routine. Running water was preferred over standing water because moving water carries fewer parasites. Morning was the best time to collect water before the heat stirred up the sediment and the life in it. The first sip of any unfamiliar water was always small, a taste test that gave the body a warning before a full drink. And the water at the edge of a pool was always avoided, because that is where the contamination collects. These rules sound simple, but each one is a distilled lesson from 1,000 past disasters. Somewhere, a long time ago, someone drank the wrong water and paid for it, and the survivors remembered. In the modern world, these skills survive mostly in the margins. Survival instructors teach them to soldiers and adventurers. Indigenous communities still practice them in the lands where they have always lived, and every few years a hiker or a lost traveler who read about them in a book manages to find water in a crisis by remembering one small piece of ancient knowledge. The skill is not extinct, it is just underused. It sits in the background of human memory, waiting for the day someone turns off the tap. Now consider the strangest part of this story. Today, most humans on Earth have access to safe water with the turn of a tap. Yet water is still the most contested resource on the planet, and billions of people still struggle to find it every day. The ancient skill of finding water has not disappeared because the problem disappeared. It has disappeared from the lucky half of the world because infrastructure replaced it. But the underlying truth is unchanged. Humans are water finders. We have always been water finders. The only thing that changes is whether we find it with our own eyes or with pipes. Think about what that means for how we understand human intelligence. We tend to measure intelligence by what we can write down, by our technology, by our science. But for most of human history, intelligence was measured in the field. The smartest person in the group was not the one who could count the highest. It was the one who could look at a dry landscape and know, with absolute certainty, where the water was. Modern life has made this skill invisible. You turn a tap, and water appears. You buy a bottle, and water is guaranteed. The entire water infrastructure of the modern world, the reservoirs, the pipes, the treatment plants, the bottles, is a machine for making sure you never have to think about where your water comes from. It is one of the greatest achievements of civilization, and it has cost us something. We have traded knowledge for convenience, but the knowledge is still real, and it is still true. The dry riverbed still hides water under its sand. The doves still fly to water at sunset. The green reeds still mark the underground stream. None of that changed because we invented plumbing. The world is still full of water, and the old map of signs still works, if you know how to read it. It is the same map your ancestors read, and it has not gone out of date in 100,000 years. The next time you drink a glass of water, pause for a second. Think about what that water represents. Behind that glass is a chain of knowledge and engineering stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, through aqueducts and pumps and treatment plants, all the way back to a dry riverbed where someone dug in the sand, watched it fill with clear water and drank. You are not drinking water. You are drinking the accumulated knowledge of every water finder who ever lived. Your ancestors never missed a day.